Okay everyone, welcome back to the channel for another video on Gran Turismo 7, and I am back with our Sunday daily race in VR. For this race we decided to go into daily race C with no practice, jumped in on my second account starting from P7. We had no real warm-up. I think I'd managed to get half a lap in or something like that before we went into it. So bit of a learning experience. We're starting on the medium tyres. You can see here we're in VR, and yes, this car is actually pretty nice in VR because it has a very nice rear view mirror in the dash, so quite handy to see that. Again though, it's very hard to know how far cars are behind you or are in front of you, which in this race it really made a bit of a difference. As I was just resetting the position there because it was a little bit out of sync. One of the problems with VR is sometimes it doesn't sync up correctly to your position in the car. You just have to hold the button down and resync it and it gets it in line properly. But we got that sorted, and we're now behind Womack in front of us. We have no idea who's behind us, and again, this is a bit of, I hope there is an option in the future to add a little bit more race information to VR so that we can see who's behind us, the gaps to the car in front. Also, for example, when people are pitting, having no idea what tyres they were on or coming out on, it doesn't tell us any of that information in VR. So there is some improvements that could be done to make it quality of life a little bit better. I understand why they've done the game the way they have in VR for immersion, but when it's coming to try and compete on like a competitive race, it would be nice to have the option. It doesn't have to be compulsory, just have an option to have that information at the side somewhere on the top left or something like that. But yeah, we're coming to the end of lap 1. We're just trying to get used to it at the moment, obviously on the medium tyres. This car actually felt a little bit more stable in VR. Probably it's just because of the perspective of the car and being inside it, and probably not driving as quick as we were out of VR. So on these early laps we're just trying to figure it out and just pick up pace gradually, because I don't want to just go ultra aggressive and just crash instantly. So 1 lap completed, and we're now starting lap 2, and we're going to try and get a good exit off this turn 1. We get a reasonable exit. You see P6 goes a little bit wide there. Looks like he's going to pick up a penalty, which he has done. So that's going to be a penalty for P6 and Womack there as he's going up behind the car in front. Also another car up there with a penalty. We can have a little look around the outside here and try and do a little bit of an undercut. This corner actually felt really good in VR. For some reason the traction on that corner was incredibly good in VR, better than non-VR, but yeah, other corners were a little bit harder. This corner here, for example, was a little bit harder. We give Womack a little bit of a tap there. Didn't really judge how close we was to him. And then as we turn into this corner here, you're going to see I clip the curb, lose the rear, try and save it. Then we're into the gravel, and then as we're just turning and we're losing control slightly, car goes around the outside to try and avoid us and clips us, and he's off the track there. So unfortunate event there, bit of a racing incident, not much we could do. We hit the curb funny, then into the gravel. But luckily for us, we're still in P9. But sorry to that driver, I did apologise to him and he was fine with it, no issue there, so he's not got a problem. We're carrying on with this race in P9. So we have lost a few positions there. We're back down to P9 and just trying to get used to this car. So some corners feel like it understeered more. Other corners felt like it had really good traction and it rotated nicely. It's very different in VR, this car. I have to say, it drives nothing like the non-VR version when you're outside on the bumper view. But again, in this view, it was actually really nice to have the wing mirrors and also that extra view of looking behind you so you can see the cars behind. The right hand mirror you could also see as well, but unfortunately for you lot, you're not seeing that full perspective. This car looked really good in VR, I have to say. In the cockpit, it felt really nice to drive. So another enjoyable car. I have to say, Group 3 in VR is actually really, really fun. I definitely should have had a little bit more of a warm-up to find some pace for this race in VR, obviously. But as we come through that turn 4, Womack there loses the rear, very easy to do. Power down, lost it into the barrier. So that's another position gained. Skipping a little bit further ahead in the race now, and we're coming up behind P6. You can see we're now on to lap 4 of this race. He had a bit of a moment there. That's going to give us a little bit of a chance to get close. And another car losing control and going off the track there. So that's another free position up to P6 now. And now seeing if we can put this driver in front of us under a little bit of pressure. Can we find the way past him? So taking a tight line through here. Can we get on the power nice and early there? Trying to get a run onto this right hand corner up here. So we're going to get the slipstream, have a little look up the right hand side, but we're not really close enough to go for a move there. And I have to say, in Group 3, when you're racing close with another car, it's actually really intense, because obviously they're a bit bigger than some of the other cars. It actually feels pretty good in GT7 in VR. Really enjoyable stuff. So again, over the line to start lap 5, and we're going to probably go in the pits on this lap. You can see there we're going to probably go from the mediums onto the softs on this lap, because I think it was 10 degrees, so made sense. Plus I was in VR, so I didn't really trust myself doing anything really early with soft tyres and having no grip towards the end. But you can see getting that slipstream again. Can we go for a move into technically turn 3? Have a little look up the inside, brake late, downshift through the gears, and make a really nice overtake late on the brakes there into that turn 3. So a nice move done, and up into P4, although we're not actually in P4 because a lot of people have pitted. So another thing you don't see when people are pitting, it's quite frustrating. There's nothing to show you that there's cars up ahead of pitted, like when you're playing on normal 2D screens. You have the icon that tells you that someone's gone into the pits because their tyre icon will come up. On this, you have no idea, so you're racing a little bit blind. So technically we're in about P6 or 7 at the moment, I think. We're not actually in P4 because, like I say, some people have pitted. But we're going into the pits this lap as well. Going to get into them pits, try and get as good a good entry and exit as possible, and then get them tyres on, soft tyre on. You can see now we can see some people are in the pits, but we don't know before that who was actually in the pits. So yeah, it's little things like that that I wish that PD could give us the extra info for. But we've come out of the pits now into P8. So yeah, we've actually dropped down a little bit, but some people in front of us haven't pitted yet now. So it's just a case of figuring out where we are after a few laps and let the people that have started on the softs go in the pits and then get their medium tyres on, and then we'll have a truer reflection of where we actually are in this race. But you can see the car behind quite close out of the pit lane. We managed to brake quite late for that corner, but we've got quite a big gap to the car ahead now. You can see P7, quite a distance you can see quite a bit of a distance to P7. It's going to be quite hard to catch him up, but we're now just trying to get used to the soft tyres, because again, this is our first lap driving the soft tyres in VR and just trying to find out where the grip is and just trying to find out how hard we can push in this view in VR. At the moment it feels pretty nice, getting on the power on the exit, and then this corner again. This corner was the hardest corner probably in VR, just trying to really push it through there and understand where the grip was compared to the non-VR. It was a lot easier in non-VR, but you can see we're skipping ahead now, and now we've got a penalty on lap 8. So we're going to take that penalty, and luckily the car behind also had a penalty. So we're now catching up to the car in front of us there, sorry, I think it's in P5 in front of us, and he I think was on the medium tyres. Like I say, it's very hard to judge what tyres people are on, but we've managed to obviously gain positions where people have pitted, so we haven't had to do an overtake there. We've just gained a few positions from pit stops and stuff like that. But you can see we're starting to catch up to P5, getting a lot closer to him now, and I'm not sure if he was on mediums or softs. I presume he was on mediums because of when he came out the pits. He either did a really late stop on mediums to go onto softs and have really fresh tyres, or he was on soft tyres and now he's on mediums. And yeah, it's quite hard to judge, especially in VR, because it's harder to judge the pace difference in corners because you've got no delta to see where people are gaining and stuff. But we're getting very, very close through here. You can see having a little look there, and now we're just trying to get a good exit from this corner. Purple sector there, which is quite interesting. So we've clearly got reasonable pace in this car, but we're going to get a little bit held up now. We're going to go to the right hand side, have a little look up there. Looks like we've got the tiniest bit of the car up the right hand side. It's hard to tell, but decided to brake early and just back out of that one, as it was really hard to tell where our front end of the car actually was at that point. So into this final right hand corner, he runs a little bit wide there, but just about keeps it in the track limits. And now we're going to go over the line, and you can see it would have been a reasonable lap, but we obviously had to back out of that final sector, lost at least half a second. So now into turn 1, trying to get on the power as early as we can. Can we get enough drive off this corner to make a move into turn 3 at the top of the hill? So pushing our way up the hill now into the slipstream. And again, another thing that was pretty difficult actually was judging the shifting on this car, because you only had the bar on the actual steering wheel. So I was just shifting when it was going red, because I think that would have been just before the end of the rev limiter when you're on normal 2D screen, because this car revved a lot further on that bar. So yeah, I was just red. There was like a little red icon that flashed up. So just before it hit that, I was shifting. I think that was about optimal for this car. So into turn 4, trying to get a good exit again. Really nice in that corner in VR. For some reason, that corner felt a little bit easier than in non-VR. But can we get close enough now to go for another move on this driver in P5? You can see he's taking a really tight line through there. We're getting on the throttle, trying to find the exit speed off this corner, because this is where we went for the move before. We got a much better exit. So I do think he was on medium tyres, because his pace through that section wasn't brilliant. And now I've got a nice run. Can we go for a move this time? We're going to go to the left-hand side this time, and then I'm going to try and brake a little bit early and force him to go a little bit deep on that inside line, which he does. We take a nice early apex, get on the throttle, nice move up the inside, and actually a really enjoyable move to do in VR. I have to say I enjoyed that one in VR. It's really good to see the car at the side of you and just to get that little bit later on the brakes and get ahead of him. So up into P5, but you can see ahead of us quite a big gap to the leaders, although they are in, you can actually see they're up there. So without all the chaos and losing time, we definitely could have fought for a podium in this race, especially with that little mistake we made. So by the end of the race, we managed to start getting a little bit better. We were doing mid 28s, and even on the last lap with the tyres fading quite drastically, we managed to do a reasonable lap. So there's definitely potential in VR. I don't think I'd ever race it in a competitive scene. It's not going to be as competitive as when you're in the 2D screen, because you just lose a little bit here and there. But overall, really enjoyable in Group 3, I have to say. This track as well, one thing you really notice more about VR is the elevation change on this track compared to non-VR. Everything just seems so much more lifelike. The uphill sections are more severe, the downhill sections are much more severe than when you're on the 2D screen. It's really enjoyable. So if you haven't had a chance to try it, make sure you get yourself onto the VR headset at some point, even if it's at your friend's house. Have a go of it, because it does show you how much more elevation there is on these tracks when you're in VR. It's really, really fun. But coming up to the final lap here, you can see now on a pretty good lap for our last lap, driving quite well in VR. Starting to figure it out at this stage. Probably if we did another race, I think we could have challenged if we would have set a lap time. Probably a challenge for a win in this one, I reckon, because we were starting to get a little bit more pace towards the end. So over the line, and we can see we go over the line with a 28.6 on the final lap, which is pretty solid with them tyres at that stage. Still not as fast as what we would be in non-VR, but only a couple of attempts off probably. So considering we jumped on with no practice, pretty happy with that one. And we managed to gain positions even with a little bit of chaos and a little bit of a mistake in there. So yeah, good race, enjoyable. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comment section what you think of the VR in Group 3.